Yeah.
Just in case, they were to move out to the county here and all kinds of stuff. So
Okay.
they were just precautionary measures that decided just to take it all off. And the other day, I actually had that off, the knives, most of the BB guns, everything that could be used as a weapon and like actually do harm. We had pulled off the shelves.
Okay.
The other day.
All right. Well,
I was allowed to put this everything but the ammo back out, and that came from corporate.
Okay.
So I can't do anything about it.
all right. Understand. Thank you, sir.
Well, we hope they stay safe, and the violence in Baltimore has calmed down a great deal. But let's not forget what the source of the violence in Baltimore is. Just as in other places, the source of the anger, the source of the frustration, the fountainhead of all this has been police brutality and death of people in the hands of the police when they presented absolutely no threat to the police. Now we see the police are pushing back with an interesting narrative that, frankly, I don't find to be very credible. This is from the Washington Post. We have it on INFOWARS.com. Now we hear that a prisoner who supposedly was in the van with Freddie Gray said that Gray was trying to injure himself. Now, he says that he heard him banging about on the walls of the vehicle and then makes the implication here that he was intentionally trying to injure himself. Well, I don't really know how that individual could determine that. He was also picked up, I think, a half hour after they had picked him up. Nevertheless, let's remember that just today we also had some evidence resurface that showed that they made an additional stop that they had not reported. What were they doing in that stop? This is what we see continually from the police. Not full disclosure. We see them being caught in lies, inaccuracies, incomplete information. And so the question is, will justice be done? And that is at the heart of these riots there. Here's the Washington Post recounting of that. They say a prisoner sharing a police transport van with Freddie Gray told investigators he could hear Gray banging against the walls of the vehicle, believed he was intentionally trying to injure himself. Now, here's the interesting thing. The prisoner is currently in jail, and he was separated at the time from Gray by a metal partition, so he couldn't really see it. He didn't have any conversation with him to see if he was in a suicidal mood. And remember that his neck was broken 80% of the way through. An amazing story if it is true, if he could do that to himself. Now, you also need to understand that this prisoner is remaining anonymous. That also, to me, looks suspicious. Just as I said, we have already seen them giving us partial information that turns out to not be true with this footage that was released today. We also have another update from the mayor. Fox News reports that the Baltimore mayor ordered police to stand down and let them loot. Now, we've already had a video of the mayor saying that she had given them space to destroy. This is the report coming out of the Daily Caller and Fox News. They say this is coming from a very senior law enforcement official with direct knowledge of the orders that were given by the mayor and her police commanders down to the very core of the police riot units. They say the message was, let them loot. It's only property. Supposedly, that is what they were telling them to try to keep this contained. That does not contain anything, quite frankly. To let them destroy the neighborhood, to destroy the businesses there, many of them minority owned, to destroy cars that belong to the people in the neighborhood. How does that help anything? And we need to also understand that this is part of an agenda, I believe, to try to balkanize the country, to divide us, white against black, the civilians against the police, as they'd like to call us civilians. We need to not buy into this narrative. We need to press forward peacefully with demonstrations to make sure that justice is done, that we can change the way that the police are treating us. The police have already changed the way they're treating us. They used to not treat people the way they do now. These are new rules that have come out of the federal government about how they are to respond to people. We also see that they are not held accountable when they use lethal force and their life is not in danger. We need to change it back to the way that it was, and we need to change our country back to the way it was in many different areas. And of course, one of those is private property. Many people are pushing the narrative that it really pales to worry about private property when we have people who are being killed by the police in custody. But you need to understand that if you don't have property rights, you are the property. You are a slave. It's just that simple. Property rights are like the rights to keep and bear arms. They're one of our fundamental rights. They're very important, just like the right of free speech. And to give you an update as to what's happening in defense of property rights in the Oregon mine, the Oregon gold mine, where they now have the Oath Keepers in a security mode against the BLM. If you remember, we reported that the BLM was going to have a deadline. It's nearly a week that this deadline has passed. They had told these people who had operated the mine for 150 years, they had to close it down, seal it up, fill up all the holes, and to remove all of their equipment and buildings by last Saturday. That's nearly a week ago. When they got that notification, they asked for legal clarification, and they were stonewalled by the BLM. At that point, they asked for Oath Keepers and other people, 3%ers, to set up a security operation, and that's what happened. It isn't a showdown at this point. Nevertheless, word has now come out by Locked and Loaded News, and I've also had some reports from some people we're in contact with. There are concerns that outside contractors are being brought in by the BLM. This report says on 29th of April, it was reported that the command center of Operation Gold Rush was under continual observation by unknown surveillance operatives that the BLM had brought in armed security contractors. And of course, this is exactly what they did at the Bundy Ranch. They had observers there watching the entire week that we were there before the standoff eventually happened. And they had been pointing guns at people at the same time. They had actually, in that particular case, there had been some violent confrontations by the BLM. But they point out that the BLM denied knowledge of the security contractors' existence. They said these men were simply, that had been spotted, were simply attending a pizza party in Medford celebrating the retirement of a coworker. They said, however, that was not where they saw the people that they're concerned about being contractors. And so they go on to say, they don't wish to engage in speculation at this time. However, the narratives simply do not match. And that brings us back to where we started at the beginning of the broadcast. When you lie to people, and we see this happening from the government, we saw it happen from Walmart. There's all kinds of speculation now about why Walmart is closing those stores, because we know it isn't the plumbing. They haven't applied for any plumbing permits. I don't believe that it has anything to do with Jade Helm. Nevertheless, and nobody here does. Nevertheless, when you tell people lies, that's when people start to investigate, and that invites speculation. And so that's exactly what we see happening with the BLM, because no one in the government at any level seems to be capable of any transparency and honesty. Stay with us when we come back. We're going to talk about how the Homeland Security Chief tells Rand Paul that he really doesn't understand the legal issues of the Fourth Amendment. And we're going to talk about all the president's psychologists. The APA was actually actively working with the CIA and their torture program. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape, but that we can fight back against. Made with organic and wild cultivated herbs and manufactured in the USA, the new INFOWARS Life Lung Cleanse is here in a convenient spray bottle that can be brought with you throughout any toxic environment. Now available exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139. InfoWars Life and InfoWarsLife.com is extremely excited to announce our latest release, Winter Sun, a revolutionary type of vitamin D3. Winter Sun is a premium quality vitamin D3 nutritional supplement. It is produced by extracting oil from healthy, nutrient-dense plants known as lichens. Every batch is analyzed for purity and D3 content. It's completely free of toxins and allergens. Simply put, if you want the best at an extremely low price, this is it. Winter Sun is the result of our pursuit of the best source of vitamin D3. The research and development took over 2 years, but the result, as verified by independent laboratories, is the best vegan vitamin D3 product in the world. Read the facts at InfoWarsLife.com about Winter Sun Vitamin D3. Not only does vitamin D3 promote a healthy mood, but vitamin D supports our memory and brain function, something the globalists are targeting. Visit InfoWars.com today or call 888-253-3139.
Now, in a story on InfoWars.com today, we see that Rand Paul grills the head of Homeland Security, and the head of Homeland Security admits that he doesn't really know anything about the Fourth Amendment and could care less, quite frankly. Here's that clip.
Do you believe the government has the right to have bulk collection of records from millions of individuals without a warrant?
I see. That is, I respectfully say that is beyond my competence as the Secretary of Homeland Security to answer in any intelligent legal way. I wouldn't want to hazard a legal judgment on that.
Now, of course, as you listen to that clip, one of the first things that Rand Paul asks him about is third-party data collection. This is something that phone companies and internet service providers have been doing and turning over to the government. And the government has maintained that they don't need a search warrant because this is information that because you signed up with a cell phone provider or with an internet service provider, that they own that information about you. It's not your information. So all they have to do is ask the phone company or the internet service provider, and if they willingly turn that information over, they don't need a search warrant. That's the discussion they should have had. But the discussion that they got was that Jay Johnson really doesn't know or care about this. He goes, "It sounds like you're asking a legal question. I can't answer a legal question." I mean, who would think that the head of Homeland Security would know or care what the law is in this country? And that's a good question. We all know that he doesn't know or care what the law is. It's great that Rand Paul asked this question, very much like what Ron Wyden did when he asked James Clapper about surveillance, and James Clapper was caught in a lie. We know that Jay Johnson knows this issue. I don't think he's as stupid as he appears to be in this video. The issue is, as Rand Paul points out, it's your agency that is coordinating and in charge of getting and keeping a lot of this information. And he says, furthermore, he says there's no, further in that video, he says there is no person named Verizon that you can go get a search warrant from. So you're going to a judge and saying, I want to collect all this information. You're not following the Fourth Amendment in any way, shape, or form. But of course, Jay Johnson pleads ignorance. Now, there has been a lawsuit brought about this very issue. It was brought by Judicial Watch, Larry Klayman, and it was about Verizon. Quite frankly, that's one of the reasons why Rand Paul mentioned that. I'm sure he knows about this lawsuit. Back in 2013, it was 16 months ago, a judge says, yeah, I think that is probably unconstitutional. But he put a stay on his order and he suspended the discovery portion of the trial. Larry Klayman is asking that that be revised now because he has a witness who has information that 2 members of the Supreme Court have been targeted by our U.S. spy agencies. And by that, I mean the NSA and the CIA. This is an individual named Dennis Montgomery, they say, who can testify about the unconstitutional and illegal surveillance conducted by the NSA and CIA that is highly relevant and of crucial importance as he worked closely with these agencies following September 11th, 2001. That was from Klayman. And he says, furthermore, that his poor health adds to the urgency that his testimony be taken now. So he's asking that the trial would resume. Now, on yesterday's filing, when he asked for this trial to be resumed so this man's testimony could be taken, Klayman revealed that Montgomery would provide evidence that intelligence agencies have even spied on and collected private and personal information on Supreme Court Justices John Roberts and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This is a report that's on WND.com. Now, one of the things that this brings up, of course, is what many of us have said for a very long time, even before the Ed Snowden leaks. Many of us were openly questioning whether or not Chief Justice Roberts had been blackmailed into changing his vote on Obamacare. If you remember when that came up, everyone said Obamacare was going to be struck down as an unconstitutional mandate by the Supreme Court. because they have no right to mandate us to buy anything. Now, of course, they're going to mandate us to have injections. That's going to be another fight. Nevertheless, it was going to be 5-4. Chief Justice Roberts had written the opinion that would have struck down Obamacare. And at the last minute, he changed his opinion, and he wrote the opinion for the other side, saying it's a tax, so the government can do it. That is pretty much unprecedented. I personally don't know of any other occasion where a justice has written